through this experience, I know that each of us has faced, if you've taught in the spring or summer, or will likely be facing unique challenges, failures, and successes. So the purpose of this town hall was really to bring together faculty, instructors, and staff from across engineering to share their own experiences in developing and contributing to remote teaching. I don't think we'll have all the answers for you today, but I hope this is the beginning of, Greg's like, we will have all the answers. We likely won't have all the answers, but I hope this is the beginning of more discussions to come and a way for us to identify the types of supports or resources that you might need moving forward to help successfully transition your courses to online in the fall. To give you a sense of what to expect for today, we'll go through, Monique and I are going to share really briefly some of the resources and supports that are available through the Faculty of Engineering, as well as the McPherson Institute. I am so terrible. I just realized I didn't actually introduce myself because apparently I assume everybody knows who I am, but no, everybody does not know this. So I'm Melik Ziadin. I'm an educational developer at the McPherson Institute and key contact for the Faculty of Engineering. So I'm sort of your go-to person for any questions around transitioning your courses to online in the fall. There is a small team that I am working with to help support you through this transition. So you will likely be connecting with me and or them. We'll also we're so fortunate to have 4 panelists who will lead us through a discussion and share their own experiences, best practices, strategies with you today. And then I really want to leave time for Q&A, informal discussion, where we can hopefully learn from one another as well. Okay, so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Monique first to just briefly go over some resources and supports that are available through the Faculty of Engineering. And then I'll talk a little bit about what the McPherson Institute can offer.
Thanks, Melik. So hi, everyone. For those of you who don't know who I am, I'm Monique Beach. I'm the Manager of Communications for the Faculty of Engineering. I've been asked by the Dean and others to put together a bit of a plan to help support best we can some of the content creation activities you guys are facing right now. So my team consists of myself. We have some visual content creators, videographers, photographers, editors, and others, graphic designers whose main job really is to promote the faculty, but in this case, we're trying to provide supports to you as you're going through the process. We've hired extra student staff as well this summer to help you. So where we can assist is even training the trainer. So if you have a student you're working with right now, send them our way if they have any questions at all about content creation. As well, my team's setting up 3 fixed studio locations throughout the faculty, 2 in JHE and 1 ETB, that will have what we call a one-button studio inspired by McPherson Institute, where you press one button literally, you get the proper lighting, proper audio, ready to go, and light boards will be there for you to use. So if you have any questions at all, please send them my way. Just email me directly, and happy to assist you in that.
Thanks, Monique. So I'm going to share with you some of the supports and resources that we have available or that McPherson has prepared and continues to develop to assist faculty and instructors with their transition to remote teaching. All of what I say here, I will also be circulating via email, so don't worry about scribbling down links or taking too many notes. I promise to share this information via email later this week. Some of this is still in development, so it will likely, the number of resources and supports that you have access to will also likely expand over the next couple of weeks. So what you're probably most familiar with is the ability to reach out to us to request a consultation. So one-on-one consultations are always available. What we will also do is work with to try and tailor customized assistance for departments, programs based on topics potentially, based on department or cohort. So we'll also lead department or cohort-based sessions. So in the email that I circulate later this week, we'll have a sign-up sheet for group-based consultations over the course of the summer. Of course, this isn't the only way you can reach out. If you do need one-on-one assistance as well, we're happy to facilitate that process too. McPherson has recently also relaunched a virtual drop-in series, which we're calling the Ask MI or Ask the McPherson Institute Anything. And so these started this week and will continue over the course of the summer. They will take place every Tuesday from 10 to 11. And you're welcome to come and ask any burning questions that you might have. The link to join, it will always be the same, and I will share that by email with you later this week as well. We have over the past couple of months also offered a variety of webinar sessions, and more will be scheduled over the summer. So these webinar sessions will cover various tools that you're probably somewhat familiar with now, but these will include training on WebEx, Microsoft Teams, Zoom, Avenue to Learn, and then we will also provide training on specific topics such as effective online learning, facilitating online discussions, creating a learner-centered syllabus, etc. And I'll show you where to find those on our website as well, in case you're not familiar with the McPherson website. We have also been working with departments specifically to cater some of these sessions to them based on their specific needs or specific questions that they have. So for example, next week we'll be leading a training with the School of Engineering Practice and Technology to demonstrate the use of Whiteboard and OneNote and Microsoft Teams as one example. Our website also has several resources and guidebooks that you're welcome to refer to. It may answer some frequently asked questions. So I will happily share those links with you too via email. And then something that you're probably not aware of because we haven't launched it quite yet, but for faculty and instructors who don't have direct support to a course designer and would like some assistance with developing the course, McPherson is in the process of actually developing a course on learning to teach online. This course will be available on Avenue to Learn and is expected to launch at the end of June. As soon as I have more details, I'll definitely share those with you. Okay, I think that's it for the McPherson Institute's supports. I'll throw my email up here at the end of our town hall. Oh, no, let's show you how to get onto the remote teaching website. So the McPherson website is mi.mcmaster.ca. When you get to our landing page, you can go to the Teaching Remotely webpage by clicking here. When you do that, you'll be taken to all of the resources and information pertaining to online teaching with various tabs across the top. So you can find a list of all the training that's available on the training tab. The Teaching Remotely has a lot of our resources and guidebooks. And what you might also find useful are the frequently asked questions. We're constantly updating those. So you might find a quick answer to a question that you have by looking there first. Okay. Okay, so I am so excited to turn this over to our 4 panelists today. So we have Dr. Gregory Wool from the Department of Mechanical Engineering, Dr. Elizabeth Hassan from the Department of Mechanical Engineering as well. We have Dr. Jake Neese from the Department of Chemical Engineering and Dr. Sesha Srinivasan from the School of Engineering Practice and Technology. Welcome, and I'm going to turn things over to you in just a second. But I will say we are going to allow our panelists to moderate their discussion, and then we will take a question and answer once the panel discussion is complete. Please feel free to ask your questions in the chat throughout this conversation if you just want to make sure that you don't forget a question. I will be moderating the chat. Once the panel discussion is over, you are welcome to unmute your mic and ask your question that way, whatever you are most comfortable with. Does that sound okay? All right. I'm going to turn it over to Greg, Jake, Sesha, and Liz for our panel discussion.
Okay, great. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Mel. Actually, we're going to start off with with Liz. Liz has something to share with everyone. Liz, you all ready to go? Or are you?
Yeah. So I thought I'd start with some results that we did of some student surveys that we did in mechanical engineering. So we did an anonymous survey of our students, asking them what they were looking for in terms of learning online, and what we could learn from our experience with that very rapid transition to learning online in March. And the most persistent theme in the comments and in the responses was that frequent live engagement is really very, very important. And that's probably not all that surprising to you. But it certainly is like the biggest theme. And I think that it's actually really encouraging, right? Because what students are saying is that they want more of us, that they're not really too bothered by, yeah, it's really nice. You know, like they actually want to hear from us, and that, you know, they aren't really looking for us to be super polished entertainers. They're looking for us to be responsive and engaging with them. And they're not looking to have things be easy. They just don't want things to be really hard. They want to be able to reach out and talk to someone. And so, you know, in response to that, I'm planning on being really kind of thoughtful about how I'm using my live time. And so I think what I'm going to do is, for things where there's no real value to me being live, I won't. So I'm going to do kind of shorter content videos for when I'm just kind of going through PowerPoints. And then I'm going to use the live time to give student feedback and do design reviews and spend a lot of time almost one-on-one or in small groups of students to move their projects forward, which is, you know, how it works in my class. But in general, the students are going to see my face a lot more in the fall than they did in that very rapid transition in March. And, you know, one of the challenges that they also really noted was they were having a really hard time keeping track of all of the different assignments and things like that, that they were finding that side of it quite overwhelming. And I think that, you know, in March, we were sort of constrained by whatever was in our existing course outlines, right? And we couldn't change them too much. My plan for the fall is to make things a little bit more granular and a little bit more scaffolded to make it a little bit easier for students to keep track of things, so that the projects won't go on for quite as long. They won't have to have quite as many open loops at the same time. One thing that they also really noted was the importance of accounting for students who have kind of spotty internet. You know, they were saying, yeah, we really want everything to be live, but they were also saying we want it to have a recording afterwards to compensate for that situation where maybe they aren't able to attend live for technical reasons or something like that. And I think that that's a really important point in terms, you know, I would never want to have something where someone's grades depend on them being available at a particular moment in time. So that's certainly something to keep in mind, is that, you know, having asynchronous and flexible assignments is probably really good, in addition to having synchronous lectures or some kind of an interaction. They were also kind of concerned about us taking the opportunity to teach them more, right? And to basically say, wow, now we don't have any limits on class time, so we're just going to cram as much interesting goodness into this course as we possibly can. And so my goal is to keep the time commitment about the same as the in-class amount. So, you know, the total of my pre-recorded lectures, their project work, their consultations with me and the TAs, I'm aiming to keep that very similar to the time commitment they would have experienced if they were in person, to kind of compensate for the fact that they're doing 6 courses that are all going to have their own demands. And then the other thing that I'm planning on doing, and this isn't really in response to the student survey, but it's more my own insight, that, you know, some of the things I did in person, for example, in my technical drawing class, my students would measure a part and then draw it. Well, if I'm giving them the part digitally, there's absolutely no reason to sketch it, right? And, you know, and so in that case, my plan is to add a little bit more critical thinking into those kinds of simple in-person assignments. And because I think that that'll be more engaging by almost compelling the students to think more. It will hopefully make it a bit less less boring, and it'll maybe compensate for the fact that it's not quite as a high touch environment. And that's kind of it. But I think it's really remarkable that really all they need from us is to be responsive and and to be engaged, and they really don't need anything else. So that's actually pretty easy. So that's really nice. So I'll pass it off to whoever the next panelist is. Is that you, Greg?
No, it's Jake.
Oh, okay, Jake. Yeah.
Greg knew that you were going to kill it, so he put me after you, just so you know. So thanks a lot, Liz. No, but we had access to Liz's survey data in our department. I don't know if other departments got it too, but we got access to that, and it's both unsurprising and a little bit comforting. Just to echo the last thing that Liz said there, is like what the students really want is they want as close to the live university experience that they know and love. Love is a loose term. As possible, so as to get them the greatest engagement and to talk about that a little bit more. I'll just go into a few things. So I have, we agreed on that I would talk about 3 short topics. I'll probably only take a couple of minutes. One is on communication, one is on methods for engagement, and just some generic suggestions. I don't have any technological solutions for these things. And the last one is maybe some suggestions on assessment. So I'll start with the communication piece, and just to go along with what Liz was saying, and what I know Greg is going to talk a little bit about, is that simplicity with communication, I think, and consistency with what the students are used to is going to be very important. So personally, I guess maybe a mistake or something that I tended to do in the winter term when things got out of control was, you move to an online class structure. So our department was exposed to MS Teams. So we're like, okay, yeah, we'll throw the MS Teams up there. But one thing that I'm going to really suggest is that your main locus of communication, whatever you're going to be doing to send out announcements, post assignments, maybe have a calendar for people to keep track of those assignments and assessments like Liz was talking about, is to stick with something consistent like Avenue to Learn. Like if you've already are used to using something like Avenue to Learn for making your posts, then you really ought to really take a conscious step towards doing that consistently. And that almost goes without saying, but it's really easy to try to remind people of some things, like on the Microsoft Teams discussion board, like right there, I can easily just say, hey, reminder that your assignment is due tomorrow, because I'm right there, and we just, you expect people to go for lecture. But really what you ought to do at the bare minimum is put it on Avenue as an official post, even if you're going to do that on Teams or whatever platform you're using anyway. So another thing to talk about, and Liz touched on a little bit, is bandwidth and student accessibility, depending on where they are. So when you're talking about synchronous content or live content, sometimes you just have students that aren't going to be able to watch it. They're not going to be in the country. They're not going to want to get up at 2 in the morning to watch your thermodynamics class. Sorry, Greg. But it's, but one thing that you also need to be aware of is group work. And that's going to be something that, if you have everybody, you say you must meet as a team to work on these assignments. Sometimes it's very difficult to facilitate that on the student side. So whatever suggestions you can provide, and sometimes it's as easy as just being open to saying, hey, let me know what I can do to help you organize team meetings and that sort of thing, so that it's accessible for everybody. And then even if you think technologically, a couple of quick things, like if you're planning on posting asynchronous content, or even post-captured or post-produced live lecture content up on Microsoft Stream or Zoom or YouTube, whatever you like, even just the difference between a live recording versus a screen cap recording, and whatever you're able to handle. Because a live recording I do my classes just capturing at 1080p and 30 frames per second, 5 gigabytes for an hour. It's a huge file, even after it's been compressed and post-produced, whereas the screen cap is much smaller. And depending on what people's accessibility are to data and that sort of thing, you might consider going with whatever you know is comfortable to you, but also results in the smallest possible file size. And then last but not least, communicating expectations for the students and for yourself, what the students can expect of you and what you can expect of the students. You can say, I don't expect you to be synchronously there in class all the time, unless you do, which is up to you. But I do expect you to keep up with the content. Whereas for me, you can expect me to be as receptive to any kinds of suggestion or feedback that you might have to be able to make this as seamless as possible. So speaking of feedback, if I move on quickly to the engagement piece, So one thing that I think maybe would set people at ease, I think there's a lot of stress with engagement here. Both for a lot of my courses, I have labs. They're not physical labs, which is a whole other kettle of fish that I don't want to get into, but like computer labs and stuff versus lectures. And people are concerned like, oh, you know, I don't know about anybody else in the room, but when I can see the number of people that are present at any point in time in a lecture, it's like a huge stress trigger item for me because I'm like watching that number, and if that number starts to like go down or something halfway through, I'm like, I'm losing them. It's over. They're leaving. And at some point, you kind of have to just accept this. I think this is the key takeaway for me when it comes to engagement. You can do your best. You can ask for feedback on engagement, but there was already going to be some people that weren't going to make it to class. There were already going to be some people that don't engage well. And it's just so much more visible now that you kind of have that exact layout of people that I just want to, I should say you should go for as much engagement as possible, but you really, at least for me, I had to tell myself to check myself a little bit because I was getting a little hung up on that one person that would just like leave class halfway through. And I'm like, what are you doing? And you don't know, they might have a totally legitimate reason to have to leave. Their internet might have cut out. You have no clue, right? So try not to stress about that too much. And then last but not least, assessment. Assessment is a gong show. I've been told to remind everybody that the whole concept of proctoring for electronic invigilation, that sort of thing, is a university level decision. And if there's something that comes out of that, you will be notified. It's not up to you to like force people to have their webcams on and that sort of thing. There will be a policy around that you could be able to adopt. But if you're looking at alternatives, it's totally possible for you to deliver most of the same assessment as you've been doing before, but just in a very slight modification. So if you want to do Avenue quizzes, that's fine. People can do typed answers in Avenue quizzes. They can do scanned solutions. I know some people in our department had put your final answer in Avenue. It doesn't automatically grade it because obviously if there's some rounding errors or stuff, you still want to hopefully have a TA go through those. But then also after the fact, scan and submit, or take a photo and submit your work to show that you did it kind of yourself. But if you're concerned about things like cheating or improper collaboration, some easy things you can do is just say like, okay, here's the test. It's the usual kind of situation. And then you have a take-home question that's due the next day. And that take-home question could be something pretty simple on your end, but it could lead to some unique solutions on the student's end. Things like find an industry application of this concept that we're talking about, or like do a quick literature search and like find a paper that uses this, something like that. And that's going to force them to kind of step out and do their own thing, because if they start to submit, everybody submits the same answer, it's a little sketchy. And then at the end of the day, I guess the one thing that I'll be doing in the fall is I'm going to be just torching the concept of tests altogether. So I've gone with open-ended kind of assignments, not that many. To Liz's point, you don't want to overburden them with just 1,000 things to do, but more open-ended design style assignments. But if that's not really in your wheelhouse, then the students will still respond well to regular testing, I think. So anyway, I've taken way more than my allotted time. There you go, Greg.
I was going to say that Jake took way more than his allotted time.
I don't know. There's a clock. It's on a computer. There's no excuse.
Okay. So the things that I was going to comment on, just to start off, is, and in fact, this actually comes from Jake. So Jake's taking even more of your time. Keep it simple. Don't drastically overhaul your course to serve this scenario that granted it's big here, and I think that everyone who's on this probably knows that we're in a capture year for CAB accreditation. So there's a lot of energy that's going on in that. There's energy that's going on in trying to put your stuff online. Try not to significantly overhaul your course, because presumably in 2021, 2022, we're going to be back to in-person classes. And so you have to be very careful that the effort you put in, if you I wouldn't say waste your time, but if you put a ton of effort into putting everything online and then you're back to in-person classes a year later, so do what you need to do. And don't drastically overhaul your course. And for goodness sake, don't do a worse job teaching a course than you would in person if at all possible, right? So don't get out of your wheelhouse to do something really bizarre. In terms of video, live synchronous video, a couple of things, and I think Jake's already touched on this, Liz has already touched on this. Cautions about limitations of bandwidth. So yes, synchronous live engagement is good, but in fact, we've probably already seen among us, the staff, the faculty, that we have challenges with bandwidth. Imagine students, and some of it's, they're living in a remote location. They can't. No, it doesn't matter how much money they throw at the solution. They can't get the bandwidth to be doing live streaming necessarily. So be careful about that and about the connectivity issues or capacity. With your videos, so like Liz said, you can do synchronous engagement, but you'll need to, it's a really good idea to record that so that it's left at the back end so students can then asynchronously get to that information and download the videos, low bandwidth. And our AODA requirements suggest that you need to caption those. PowerPoint has captioning abilities. Mac Video has captioning abilities. You will find that the captioning is horrific, especially if you have an accent. So, but it's better than nothing, and it can help out. It can also be helpful if you have some words in the files that you're working with. Okay, so some notes that go along with it. As Jake said, so no matter what you use to do if you're going to do synchronous engagement, so for example, MS Teams, Zoom, whatever it is that you choose to do, make sure that your course work is somewhere that, and again, I think some of the people in the faculty, they've gone away from our online learning system, and that's right now Avenue to Learn from Brightspace. And I know that some of you have been around for maybe long enough to know that we had a transition of a couple of online learning systems, and probably a few of you threw your hands up and said, I'm not dealing with these online learning systems, I'm going to do my own web page. The thing about Avenue to Learn is that when the student logs on, they get any notification that was posted by an instructor in a course right away. They don't have to drill down to your course. The notification comes to them immediately. Their calendar will show all of the upcoming deadlines for assignments. So if you put a Dropbox on Avenue that says an assignment is due, they can see that in their calendar. And so this is a central location that is helpful for them to organize the due dates of everything. And so that's why it's, the other thing is you get the grades back to them in a confidential manner. The assessment of stuff that they submitted in Dropboxes is confidential from the TAs. And so it's a very, the tool is actually very useful, and it's helpful for having all of the student information in one location. So I would strongly encourage everyone to use Avenue if you can. And there's lots of information and tools on how to use that. And again, Jake and Liz kind of touched on this. Be careful of what you ask the students to do outside of their synchronous in-class engagement. Remember, a lot of our students are going to be 6 courses times 3 hours per week of receiving live online content. And I suspect many of you, I'm certainly burned out from being online all the time with these online meetings. And it just, staring at this computer screen is driving me nuts. If you ask them to do group work online, you have to think hard about what it is that you're asking them to do. And does that mean that they're going to be on video engagement? Can they do it by discussion boards? That's great. So that can be synchronous engagement. So texting or typing and chat rooms and those sorts of things. So it doesn't necessarily have to be video driven. And as Liz said, the concern about adding additional work. Supplementary information is awesome. until it's required, or until you're testing on it and they feel like they have to go see that extra YouTube video. So be very careful about how much more you add on to the stuff you're delivering in your class. If it really brings value, that's awesome. But if then you have to test people, or if you're testing people on that, and only the people who went and saw that supplementary information will do well on your assessments, that becomes a challenge, and that becomes an additional online engagement that can be really challenging. So just be careful of the overburdening of students with the added supplementary information. So that's what I had to say. I think Sesha, you're
Thanks, Greg. Good afternoon, everyone. I had 6 points to make. I think 2 was done by Liz, 2 were done by Jake, and 2 by Greg. So I'm just trying to see what more I could add in terms of value here, or some of the things that I say, I might just sound like a parrot repeating what the others have told. But in my experience, I think the greatest challenge is the absence of non-verbal communication or non-visual communication between the instructor and the students. Majority of us we take the visual cues from the students. We talk, we say something, we just scan the class for about 15-20 seconds, and you see a big question mark on some foreheads, and we immediately recalibrate and repeat the information in a different manner. Now that has been taken away. All you're doing is just staring at a screen. If you have a class of even 30 students, you possibly cannot see them all on camera and understand whether they're getting it or not. So I think that will be your biggest challenge, and so you have to be prepared on how you would deal with that. And the way I do this is, you give them ample time to respond. Now, in my courses, I usually don't allow students to turn on their videos or allow them their microphones to be on. And the reason is fairly simple. You can go through some hilarious and entertaining situations to outright embarrassing situations. So you want to be very careful in an online setting. And I always believe that the students are way smarter in these technologies than I am. And I think that's most likely true for all of us, because we are dealing with a generation that were born with gadgets in their hand, and so they're very adept, and they're very quick, and they're very, very smart. So we want to be very careful around these things. I'm not trying to scare you away and from this technology, but now these are some of the tips that you may want to keep in mind. And like my other panelists have told, it would be very nice to have adequate supplementary material available for the students. You should be holding more office hours. In class, when you say something, you want to give them ample time to digest that, and some of them would communicate through a chat window. So you want to give some time for them to type stuff and so on. And if you see the same question or coming up again and again, I usually use Zoom for my communications, and I usually tell them there should be no private communication with the instructor. And again, the reason is because, if you have 80 students and each one is sending you a private question, and you have the same question coming to you, you might as well have a common answer and common response to everyone. So I usually tell them, do not post any question in private, post it in public, so that a second person is not going to waste time typing that same question. And that these are the things that will save you some time in your lecture, and you can use that time to give more space for the students to communicate with you. In our program, we started off doing a fully asynchronous lecture, which means the entire lecture is fully recorded and played, and then the students just go through some assessments at the end. I believe students completely dislike that. So if you were harboring any such thoughts, maybe you should be very cautious. That will not be acceptable to the students. They will complain. And what else I had to add? You could record your lectures, as my fellow panelists pointed out. You know, some of them may not be able to connect due to poor internet connections or whatever. And so, you know, in the aftermath, if a recorded lecture is available, it will be useful to them. But there is also an associated risk. The moment I'm telling my students that the recorded lecture is going to be available, the class attendance will drop to about 5 to 10%. So now you have to find out ways about what you would be doing in class, which they'll have to come to. So in most of my classes, I have a quiz that they have to take, and it's usually either at the middle of the lecture or at the end of the lecture, and it's randomly pulled in. So students tend to attend. And you will occasionally have these 1 or 2 students who would not be able to attend the class, and then they'll send you an email that I missed the quiz and so on. So we have to show some flexibility there. But I think that has been one of the useful things for me in terms of maintaining a healthy attendance in my class. So again, my conclusion here is the biggest challenge is that the absence of non-visual communication, and technology is not a challenge. I think it'll take you about half hour or an hour to figure out the technology that suits your course, and perhaps half a day to put together the technology and get the hang of it. The challenge is in conducting a class when you don't see the audience. And that's all from me for now.
Thank you, Sasha, Greg, Jake, Liz. I don't know if either of you had anything else to add now that you've heard, now that each of you have had a chance to speak. We do have a couple of questions that have come in, so I can go ahead and pose that unless there are some final additional thoughts that you guys had. Jake,
I think I'll just quickly throw in to Sasha concluded on a good point there, that it really doesn't take that long. If you're going to do the keep it simple Greg was talking about, it doesn't take that long. And of course, I'm not going to put words in anybody's mouth, and everybody adapts differently, to find a platform that's kind of comfortable to you and to figure it out. But we were talking a little earlier this week, and Liz brought up a good point as well. And we all kind of agreed that like the students are going to put up with ineptness for all of one class, maybe. Like, and that's just the reality. They're not going to be like chomping at the bit like wolves trying to like eat you alive. But at the same time, if the TAs are not trained properly and they don't know what they're doing, or if you have, everybody's going to have technical difficulties. But if you have consistent technical difficulties, if you don't have the chat up and you've missed 20 questions coming in, which shows engagement, by the way, then things are going to be a little bit rough, and you're probably going to lose a lot of those people really early. You're going to lose a lot of students early that are just not going to bother to come back, even if you improve. So just maybe practice, like 1 or 2, like give a lecture, just send me an email. I like learning things. I'll be your student. Just practice, just see if it works. And then you get like into that comfort zone, and you're good to go. So.
Yeah, Jay, I totally agree. And the other thing too is like the point about the TA training. In MEC, we're developing some TA training resources that we're very happy to share. And we've actually put together some faculty training resources as well that are also available to anyone in faculty or even beyond that. So you don't necessarily need to be the one doing that TA training. There's lots that's available to you as well.
That's awesome, Liz. I think that link has been shared on the broader virtual resources page in engineering, but I can include that in a follow-up email as well. One of the questions that we had was what the number of students that are in your course, the platform that you're using, and how you are gauging participation, engagement, student interest. So it's a 3-part question. If one of you, 2 of you, all of you want to address that particular question.
Sure. So 180 students in a couple of classes, one for a level 2 Mech Eng technical communication class, and one for a level 4 technical class in the biomedical engineering and mechanical engineering course program. In participation, well, okay, so historically what I've done, so I think what I'm going to do is have some quizzes. There's some participation quizzes And I think so. Sasha had said, it's a good point. You have some content maybe that's not, that's asynchronous, but then you engage them in the material that you're doing synchronously, and that can include some quizzes or something that you tell the class to do in a small group. And previously I said don't make them do, but I think within the class time, have them work together or do something, and then say, okay, so we're gonna have a quiz on that, and let's address your answers in a flipped classroom type scenario. Part of that is participation. So it doesn't matter what they get, they get like a portion of a percentage just for participating. And part of that is a grade, so that they get some sense of how they're doing. And frankly, you want to see how they're doing, and they want to see how they're doing. That's how I've used that. Gauging interest, participation. That's the quiz, an Avenue quiz, auto-graded, multiple choice is one of the easiest ways to get a quick participation sense of your class.
I agree. I think so. I teach a fully online program, and the class sizes vary anywhere between 45 to 60 students. And I think some of my colleagues teach classes that are bigger than that in an online format. And I would say, I think to keep them engaged, it is important to have some kind of an activity that you keep doing inside the classroom. And these could range from quizzes, which I don't do pop quizzes. I tell them every class that you will have a quiz next class, and I tell them the topics on which they'll have a quiz. You can have group activities. You have breakout rooms. So I use Zoom as a platform to answer Kate's question. I use Zoom as a platform. It serves with a very nice automated breakout rooms where students are randomly assigned. And I'll give them a problem to solve. They solve it as a group, come back, and then I get the questions answered. I let them, the three groups that I have, their solutions. And so this keeps the class engaged. And I think there are some students who would be accustomed to always consulting with their peers and engaging with their peers as opposed to the instructor. So this gives them an opportunity to do that. And that's and the way I would gauge the interest is if my class strength is 60 and if I'm having about 80% of attendance, then I think the class is engaged. So my lectures are typically 3-hour lectures. And if let's say there are 50 students at the beginning and in the end I'm left with 45 students, then I'm fairly happy with that engagement. And usually it's not difficult in the program I teach, because I teach in a degree completion program where you have mature students, fairly mature students who join the courses. With a predominantly undergraduate 4-year kind of a program, it might be a little more challenging. You may not see such high levels of attendance, especially if you make the lectures recorded and make it available. So I think integrating your course with an online activity is very important. So I think a few years back, someone told me that there is a lot of information that is available on Google. So we are not going to the classroom to reproduce that information. So we have to create value on what happens just because you are present in the classroom, what additional thing you bring. And that's the question that you have to figure out.
Thanks, Sasha. Jake?
I'll be the antagonist. Can I be the antagonist? I love doing that. So and this is not Tim's laughing at me now. So this is not to say anything about quizzes being a bad idea. First of all, I'll preface with that. That being said, I'm not going to do any quizzes. I don't like quizzes. I never did as a student, and I don't like doing them now. If they're graded, okay? And that's fine. Like, I like the participation quizzes. So I taught 1CO3, and Colin McDonald, Eng 1CO3, had this great kind of setup for participation quizzes, which I thought was like the perfect synergy of what I could tolerate, which was like, you have to do them and participate, and you get a specific link while you're present, and it's only valid for a limited time while you're present. But as long as you participate, you get credit for that. And then there's a small bonus at the end if a certain subset of questions randomly selected, you got them right. So it's not even about getting them right to get the grades. It was about getting them right to get a small bonus. And it wasn't very much, but the students responded very positively to that. My strategy for engagement in the classroom. So I guess I teach 5 courses in my department. I teach from 2nd to 4th year, from 30 to 150 students. So in the winter term, when we switched everything over, I used MS Teams. My 2 classes in the winter term were 35 and 80 students. So that was that size. But I have a class coming up in the fall that we're preparing for, which is about 150. And I think one of the biggest things that I'm going to use for engagement is not necessarily lecture time. I am totally intending on using the breakout rooms. I think that's a good idea. And Teams is going to have breakout rooms in the fall as well. I think Mel just actually maybe put that in the chat a minute ago. So that's cool. It can be a little clunky at first in my experience, but people get used to it very quickly. So they'll figure it out and they'll come back. I think you have a little bit of faith in the fact that you send people into breakout rooms that they're going to come back. So my lecture style is very much kind of like concept, and then there's always a workshop. Actually, that was what I worked with McPherson to completely radically change a classroom so that that's kind of how it worked. And I feel like that's going to go over okay here. The thing that I'm going to use for engagement is during tutorials. So I guess one thing that I've always tried to promote in tutorials is there's attendance. There's attendance in tutorials. It's like 0.5% per attendance that you get, up to 5% for just showing up and trying. Because one of the things that I struggle with in my class is resistance to software, resistance to like wanting to do these in-lab tutorial activities. And one thing that I really try to push on the students is that this is a team effort, that they can work together to solve the tutorial activities. Even if the tutorial activity isn't graded, I still think it's valuable to solve the activity, but people tend to clam up and just like work on their own and not talk to each other. So what we're gonna try in the fall term, I haven't had the chance, I don't teach this course currently, but in the fall term, we're gonna use the channels on MS Teams. So you can do different channels, and not just breakout rooms, but different channels where people can be randomly assigned to these channels at the beginning of the year. And then you're going to tell them that they solve the same tutorial problem, but you're going to say you're going to solve it as a team in a call together as in your channel. And one person can do the typographical stuff and like try out ideas, but they're going to share their screen and everybody's going to be working on the same problem. And then you can all like try it on your own after the fact if you like. And that is going to be, and I'm going to just kind of hop into all those different channels to just see kind of what the activity level is, honestly. So my engagement, I think it doesn't come from necessarily lecture, aside from what Sesha's saying. If you can get 75% of your people to show up for a lecture, that's a really good sign. Like that's solid. That's solid even if it's not online, right? So yeah, and I guess one other thing in terms of accommodations and accessibility for everybody that I need to throw in there is if you're going to do attendance for things like tutorials, my intention is, and we'll see how this goes, is to make sure that everybody knows that there's going to be attendance for tutorials, but I fully recognize that it might be a bit of a strange timing for some people. And so I'm going to leave it up to them and say if there is a time that, you know, if you're not able to meet kind of the usual scheduled times, which unfortunately I think for me coming up are like always 12:30 to 2:30. So like, it's not even like there might be some good opportunities, is we'll just schedule another one. Like, I don't care. Like talking about engagement, talking about reaching out and being available, like to take 2 hours, maybe in an evening or in an afternoon, that just makes that tutorial session for these 10 people just way more accessible is totally fine. And it can be done ad hoc or done as you need. But if you're going to be doing attendance sort of thing, then that's something I'm going to try. So there you go.
So just a comment on in-class engagement. So my second year course is a technical writing course, and it's the dumbest thing in the world to stand up in front of people and tell them for 50 minutes how to write. And so
anybody can do it. It's you, Greg.
And so the quiz idea is to say, okay, so I posted some slides, I posted some videos, did you actually get to that content? So quick little content quizzes at the beginning of the class. And then I had, in the in-person classes, I would have them get into groups of 4 and work on something that was, identifying how to make a paragraph more, clearer, how to structure a memo that had to communicate certain information. And so they would get, again, it wasn't worth a lot, but as a group, they would get just a participation grade on that, for working together to start following guidelines on creating a clear document. I know what most of you are going to be doing is more technical in nature, but you could have people solving things together, and it is, this is again the flipped classroom nature, is that you get students engaged in trying to understand how to solve the process, how to do the thing that you want them to do, but they can refer back to the theoretical content. But I think you have to be careful that you still have to go over some of that stuff. You have to say, so how did that go? Was that successful? Are you understanding what we're going over? And that's where I think the quizzes can help, is that they can say, wow, none of you understand that stuff. Turns out I'm failing in communicating that to you, or you just didn't look at it. Go on to Avenue. Oh yeah, none of you looked at it. What's a better way for me to communicate this to you? That's my thought on those things. So.
I think we had a question about pop-up quizzes, and I don't know if everyone's following the chat, but the question was, what was everyone's impression on pop-up quizzes? Are they acceptable to students? Should they contribute to CourseMark? And I think we've had a fair amount of discussion around using pop-up quizzes. And I think, go ahead.
So I would just say, if you're going to do surprise quizzes, you must warn the students in advance that sometime along the way, there's going to be a surprise quiz in the classes, because you'll be lynched as an instructor if you don't warn them in advance that they're going to be surprise quizzes. Right? So.
Yeah, just letting you know that next class there will be a surprise quiz.
No. So sometime in the week, sometime during the term, there's going to be these, maybe weekly, there's the odd quiz that'll pop up, maybe every 2 weeks, but I don't know which class it'll be in.
So my general consensus from your discussion is that none of you do pop-up quizzes.
I don't do pop-up quizzes, but I do have in-class assignments, and I have them almost every class. But like Jake, I'm not a quiz person. I've never really liked them. And so a lot of times what I'll do is I basically have a Dropbox set up on Avenue for in-class work. And this is when I teach in person, but I'm planning on doing the same thing online. And so basically it's a short assignment. It'll take maybe 15 minutes of time to complete it. And it's functionally for completion. And it'll be something like, okay, we've done this in class, make a drawing of something that solves this problem that we just talked about, right? And so it's a little bit more engaging than maybe a multiple choice quiz, and I'm getting them to practice something that we're gonna do in the project anyways, and then they just hand in a photo of their sketch or whatever it is, and then there's the way I grade them is, one way to get around that problem of it being like a surprise is I say, okay, say that you hand in 20 of them out of the term, I'm only actually ever gonna assess you on 80% of them. So if you hand in 16, you get perfect. And if you miss a day or two, it doesn't really matter because you have these freebies, and that kind of alleviates me having to deal with like a billion MSAFs and stuff like that.
I'm following the chat here around synchronous, asynchronous teaching. So I want to unpack that a little bit and maybe open it up for discussion. I know we touched, I know each of you touched a little bit on this when you were talking about when you had your individual 3 minutes of chat. What are each of you doing? Is the general consensus that you are taking a synchronous approach? Coming from a teaching and learning center that has me curious. Sasha?
So in my class, what we do is for each week, there is a lecture. It's a one lecture per week, and there is a takeaway message. So there is a video, or that a 5-minute video that outlines that takeaway message, elucidating a concept, if I may say.
Mhm.
And then there are a couple of videos that would illustrate that concept in examples. And the examples would be a very simple example to a slightly more difficult example. And so the students get the hang of it.
Okay.
Otherwise, in the lecture, what I would do is I would again ask the students to view that concept video. And then I again start off solving some different problem, not the ones that I have recorded. I would use a different example, and I would do 1 or 2 examples, and then I would post a third example, ask them to try solving it themselves or put them in a breakout room, something of that sort. So that's basically what I would do. A fully asynchronous is very risky. We've tried that, as I said, in the past, and I think students would be very they would just be very rough on you, and they would just point out to you saying that I've paid $1,000 and I need someone in front of the camera telling me what I should be knowing, and I can't deal with these recorded videos. And rightly so, because in a video, when I just simply record an hour-long video and I play it, sometimes in between, as a student, I would raise my hand and say, okay, stop, I have a question here. But now if I simply play that hour-long video and then I have to wait for another week or I try to address my questions over an email, that could be very frustrating for the students. And I think for that reason, I think I understand why students would be upset if it's a fully asynchronous situation.
And what Sasha is describing is exactly what Greg was trying to communicate earlier. I'm going to steal this point from you, Greg, because it's a good point, and therefore I want credit. So, but Sasha, you're doing exactly what Greg suggested, which is put in that effort or whatever, but that's useful agnostically. That's just always useful to have that 5-minute summary, whether or not you're in person or not in person. So if you're going to put that effort in to make that takeaway, right, which I love, then you can do that and still run your class almost exactly the same, right? So it's just a classic example of do what you need to do to doing that, right? So anyway, okay.
If I may add, you have to be a little careful in making these synchronous videos, because you cannot tie one video to the other. And I have done this mistake in the past, and I would say and this is very normal if you look at many of these YouTube videos where they would start with, if you look at my first 2 parts, and then the student is lost. Oh boy, where are the first 2 parts? And then they have to figure out. So I would each concept is in a single video, and there are examples. Now, if 2 years down the line, if I change the curriculum and I just need a subset of these videos that I've prepared, I can just stick them around in the course wherever I want. So making them completely independent of each other is very important.
Yeah, and if you are somebody that thrives in I'm going to call it the chalk and talk style. If you thrive in that, look at behind Greg, right? So if you do well in that, if you are somebody that has taught a course for the last 5-10 years, and you get 9 on your teaching eval or higher, and you stand up at the front of the room and you teach linear process control with a whiteboard marker, and the students like that, and they say, this is a good way to learn this content, I like doing the math by hand, I like following along, then you should do that. And if you do the 5-minute takeaway videos, all that does is add. It doesn't radically change, but it does add. So that's kind of a nice bonus. But if you feel comfortable like doing that style, like a lot of my data is not data. Like Liz is legit, right? Liz goes and gets data from the students and does the surveys and get that. What I do is every time I talk to a student, I just ask them off the cuff, off the record, okay, what's going on? And just the number of people that have said like, oh, we're so afraid that people are just going to blow up their course structure, right? Like we've heard that ChemEng 3P04 with Dr. Swartz is awesome because he's so good at like teaching on the board. And then I'm afraid that it's not going to be like that. So, you know, and like that's an interesting message, right? Because they just want, you know, that personal touch, right? They don't want the YouTube degree, as Sesha says, because it's just, you know, so augment, right? Replace if necessary, but augmenting is the way to go, if it's even possible.
So I will say that I love what you're saying about sort of sticking to what your strength is as an instructor, and not radically changing the way in which you teach, staying true to like what is authentic to you in your teaching style. I want to challenge this a little bit though, and say, how do you address students who are in different time zones, potentially experiencing bandwidth problems, or just don't have that accessibility to your synchronous course or synchronous session?
I think that's where you need to make sure that you record what you're
Yeah.
doing. You need to record your synchronous activity
Yeah.
and store it, link to it from, and I'm going to again give a little, you know, push for Avenue, but wherever your main platform is, you need a link from that to the recorded. So now it becomes asynchronous. Now it becomes a 50-minute or longer video, but it's something that students can refer back to.
Yeah. I guess that's in answer to one of Liddell's questions, right? Is something that you could always remember is that a live recorded synchronous session, as soon as it's been recorded, it becomes asynchronous. It might not be as streamlined or as condensed or as focused or as like, you know, aside from the discussion, but that's some quality content that I've been doing this for 5 years, and I still look back, and I did it I was applying for something recently, and I went and looked back, and like my courses, you get an average of 8 to 10 hours per person per course of rewatched live lecture content. And that's some people that watch them all, and some people don't watch anything, but at 10 hours each, it's like 10 extra lectures worth of viewing that in addition to being in class is like, that's value, right? That's worth the time. And that would help significantly with the whole not able to tune in live sort of thing.
So, and I think, I mean, if we drag Dr. Davidson into this conversation, his students asked him, right, Tim, they asked you to use Echo 360 because, was it Yasser who was using it in his class? And so the very premise of Echo 360 is that.
Yeah.
So,
And it's great.
Can we ask you to expand a little bit on that? I think
Go Tim.
Okay, so yeah, so I had about 3 years ago, I had in the middle of semester, a bunch of students came up to me and said, why don't you have your lectures on Echo 360? And I said, what's Echo 360? And they gave me a 5-minute rundown, and then I spoke to Yasser, and I spoke to the guy who was running it, whose name's just escaping me right now, Otto. That's right. Spoke to Otto, and like the next lecture, I was doing it. It was just so easy.
Super slick.
And you know, and it's warts and all recording of the lectures, and and the students seem to really appreciate that, and that's and now that you have Teams or something like that that'll record a lecture and have you in the corner, and I use an iPad, so I have a laser pointer type thing device on that too. It seems, you know, it seems to be reasonable. What I'm trying to think of is what's better than reasonable, and what's actually going to be really good, and how we can do things better, and how it's going to push a bunch of my faculty members into this sort of flipped classroom model because of the mode that we're in. And I think a lot of people are seeing the opportunity to do better in this setting.
So I think it's a good point, Tim. And I don't think everyone has to flip their classrooms, especially like, so Jake had said, there were instructors that were doing exceptionally well in the fashion that they were because the students appreciated what was happening in the classroom and the engagement that they were getting from the instructor, and it wasn't a flipped classroom. And you don't have to do that. You can, what you probably need then is some mechanism to write electronically on a tablet of some sort. So I've got a Surface Pro, and that's what I'm going to be using that synchronously, because I started doing that in my biomechanics class. I was so fed up with the screen coming down in the middle of the boards and I went to write stuff on the boards, and I'd have to move the screen. I'd show a slide of a cell or a histological image or an anatomical image, and then I'd have to write on either side of the screen and stuff. And so it's like I gave up, and I went to a Surface Pro when they came out. It's like, this is a fantastic thing. I can project my screen, my slides. I can move around. I can write. And so I'm going to be using that synchronously recorded with maybe a little bit of supplementary bonus information. So, but not really, but
yeah, not wanting to throw another technology at everybody, but on that side of things, the Explain Everything tool is something that because it integrates sort of pen on the iPad, pen on your tablet technologies with recording technologies in a really seamless way. And I've had a couple of people step into that in the last year, and they have become evangelists for it in ways that were quite unexpected. And it's not supported by the university right now, but it is, I think, $30 a year or something like that. So it's not a terrible cost, and some people have really liked that.
Awesome.
So I our most recent license of Microsoft apps now through the 365, you can draw on, there's drawing tools in PowerPoint, there's drawing tools in Excel, there's drawing tools in Microsoft Word, and so you don't need to use like a special, as long as you're I think you need some sort of stylus to work with, and you could use a Wacom tablet, you could use a Microsoft Surface Pro, there are people talking about using the Apple product, iPad Pro with the pencil, and either use Sidecar or Duet. So you need Duet if you have a PC, but you can use Sidecar if you've got an iMac or a MacBook Pro and you're running your iPad beside it. So I know that we're talking about relatively expensive technology here, but the Wacom tablet does work. And if you use that stylus, I mean, you can draw on your slides. And
one other thing maybe you might consider is to get a microphone, eh? You didn't really talk about that. I think
that's
sound
right. Actually,
quality is very important.
I use this guy.
Yeah.
So that's
Right.
the
Oh, mine's like it's not going to get in the camera. It goes around back behind my computer.
So the Yeti the Yeti Blue is actually a really nice, not so expensive camera, and I think I'll just try something here. I'm going to change my microphone just for a second. I don't know if you can still hear me now. Is it changed over to my?
Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds better. Did you change to the Yeti Blue?
No, it just
Stop
shut up.
confusing people.
Sorry. No, for real, there's a pretty stark difference. So that's a good example.
Okay.
I think we had one more a comment here around light boards.
Yeah, so, well, there's an expert there, right?
Yeah.
Just in my view, just a couple down below me by the name of Mike Justison. So I don't dare. Mike, do you want to comment?
Sure, I'll comment. I was really originally here just to listen, but if really the be all and end all solution is about being able to simultaneously write on your slides, I've been, I guess, quite honestly, I'd say I've been mostly motivated by fear. And I've spent the last couple of months trying to figure out a way that I can address all of these concerns about how to continue to engage students in this new online world. And I've been doing a lot of Lightboard videos for recorded content, but I really wanted to move that technology into the synchronous world. And I wanted to be able to combine it with my existing content. So, I mean, I could show you quickly, you know, for instance, something I could do is I can switch over to my existing PowerPoint slides, and I just do a really simple trick. I won't get into the details. It looks fancy. It's not. I can take all of my PowerPoint slides. Not only that, I can write on them. I can totally integrate everything. If I want to, I can go back to just plain screen with myself. You know, it erases like a whiteboard. If you want to do a problem, if you want to answer a question, if you want to, you can integrate things like live polling. I've got a sort of a favorite YouTuber that I've been following lately, and I think that's really the people we should look to. I'll share a screen of another YouTuber that I like. It's called 3 Blue 1 Brown. He mostly does math, but here he is using a live polling software. So if you want to engage your students, you know, you can have a question pop up on the screen. You can have the answers automatically sort of showing up. You could, and the other thing to point out is that this is all inside Zoom. So if you want to use breakout rooms or you want to do any of the other functioning features of Zoom, you still have it. I am in Zoom. So just like you are, you know, on your screen with your laptop, I am just on the screen in Zoom, just like you, just using a webcam, but I'm just behind a piece of glass. And for me, this was the solution that I came to, and this is how I'm going to do all of my courses. I've used Teams, I've used WebEx, I've done voice over PowerPoint, I've done tablet, I've done 2 full courses using Echo 360, and I'm going to use this. So, so anyway, that's my contribution. I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, thank you, Mike. That prompted me to include the link to the training that you did a couple of weeks ago. So that's in the chat for anybody who wants to watch Mike's training in a bit more detail with, he answers quite a few questions, demonstrates how the OBS software is used as well. So feel free to check out that link.
And I think there's, Monique, I think there's going to be some spaces that'll be available with these Lightboards too in engineering, right, as well as around campus.
Yeah, so I think
And Mel, okay.
Before Monique logged off, she said that they've purchased 3 Lightboards, and those will be made available in the classrooms that are being opened up. So I know Lightboards will be available for use. There's going to be a sign-up protocol procedure that I'm sure will be communicated as soon as we know what the process is. I believe they are also opening up Echo 360 classrooms that are equipped to record with Echo 360. If you don't want to be doing that from home and you're more comfortable doing it in a classroom, that will also be an option. Yeah, I think that's all I have for now.
Sorry to interrupt. I'm Jin. For those of you that don't know me, I work for Monique. My camera is just turning on. I work for Monique. I'm the visual content specialist for the faculty, and for the past 3 weeks, we've been working with Mike Justison to set up Lightboard capable studios. So we have 3 right now that are on the way to completion as soon as we get the operating procedures approved. And we will also have 2 available to rent out, as well as a variety of camera equipment for in-home recording for your lectures. So if you guys have any more questions, you can either talk to Mike or myself, and we can point you in the right direction. But we are currently in the process of building those studios, and they're coming along quite amazingly, and they will have live capabilities as well. So you can have synchronous teaching within the studio spaces according to a sign-out sheet, like mentioned. Yeah.
That's awesome. Thank you. I think there was a comment above around flexible grading. Jake might have mentioned it. I don't know if we want to unpack that a little bit further and how you might be changing the grading scheme based on the transition to online teaching.
Sorry, me?
Well, anybody, but I know
Cool.
that you mentioned
Yeah.
it when you spoke, and then somebody asked
Yeah,
about flexible
I
grading.
do a good amount of that too. Yeah.
Do you want to expand a little bit on that?
Yeah, so actually in both of my fourth year classes, I have something, it's kind of like choose your participation. So I do basically, in some classes it's like a more of a point system. In some cases it's kind of a binary thing. And so I have a relatively small amount of the grade set aside for participation, like maybe 5-6%. And then I have these daily in-class assignments, and then I have options to make them up. So say that someone isn't able to be in class on a daily basis, I have a couple of options for out-of-class assignments that would compensate for that. And so basically you just set up a category in Avenue for all of these options for participation. And you assign them all the same value, and you just tell Avenue to drop some fraction of them. And it'll automatically compute that score. So say that you have 20 possible items, you tell Avenue to drop 15 of them, and it doesn't matter which ones the students complete or don't complete. It'll do that for you.
Yeah, in terms of flexible grading, so I did say that I was gonna just eliminate tests and exams for one of my or for both of my courses. So in the one, we're just going to do kind of they're kind of, we're calling them challenges because they're kind of, there's going to be 5 assessments and then 1 take-home exam. It's like a 24-hour, it's not going to be like a written exam though. It's going to be a little bit different. But the idea here with these challenges is that they're worth a scaling amount of points. So the one that they do so they have to do them all. In the past, I guess, to answer Liddell's question, I used to have a practical exam in the coding class, and the assignments would take weight off of the practical exam if you did them. So it used to be like the practical exam is 30% of your grade, but every assignment that you do, which is completely optional, takes 5% and puts it on the assignment, provided that you do better on that than on your exam. And then if you do all the assignments, your exam's worth the same as the assignments, is worth 5%. So it's kind of like tricking them into practicing and also lowering the stakes at the same time, and they respond really positively to that. This year, they're not going to be optional, these assignments, because we're not going to have any exams, but we are going to make it so that they're so the assignments are worth a grand total of 65% of your grade over the 5 of them, where they're worth the least and the worst one you do up to the most and the best one you do. So that's what we're going to kind of like, say that's going to happen there. And these assignments, I guess I have to emphasize, they're not like textbook question style assignments. They're kind of open-ended kind of research and design assignments, which take just a whack of effort. And luckily I have some ammunition from years past and some summer students helping me out with that. And I'm not saying that that's feasible for everybody, but if it's possible, it's something to maybe take a look at. So.
So Mike just posted something on the CrowdMark platform. It's a good point. I think in terms of assessment, one thing I know that some people have talked about is that with assignments, you could get the students, especially if you're doing numerical solutions to like mathematical type assignments, that you could have a quiz on Avenue that is the response to the assignment, and that you have students submit quiz answers associated with specific points in the assignment. So if they have to calculate a cross-sectional area, that's a silly one, but as like, but stages of your solution they could submit a quiz answer for those, and it would help in evaluating the assignment quickly for a TA. And if they get it wrong, then you go back and you ask them to write, like, so, or you ask them to write out the process, or they upload their assignments as well. And so that a quick way of grading is that if they get these numerical points correct, then it's a quick solution, it's a quick answer. And then in terms of the front end of that, some people have talked about, well, depending on what your student number is, here are your parameters. So I've given you the parameters, you know, as variables. But for your student number, it's the last couple of numbers for your student number. They're going to decide what those variables actually are in the question. And so all of the class doesn't have the exact same thing. But I'm planning to go along the same lines as Jake, and that I don't have numerical calculations in some of my classes, but then the point of my courses are not necessarily to evaluate those as outcomes anyway. So
yeah, so in courses where you don't have numerical solutions, like for example in the last term I was teaching a course on programming. So what I did was your exam would have a question bank of 12 questions, and then the quizzes are populated randomly. In fact, well, I wouldn't say 12 questions. There were 12 question pools. So, and each pool will have 3 or 4 questions of the same type. And so now when the quizzes are starting, even the final exam is in the form of a quiz on Avenue. For each question, there is a writing space. And now from those 12 question pools, 5 question pools will be selected. So, and they appear in a random order. So each pool appears in a random order, and within a pool, a question is randomly chosen. So there is 2 levels of randomness. And I give them a very stringent timeline. They have to finish the exam in 2 hours. So this way, you minimize the chances of collaboration. I wouldn't say that I guarantee there is 0 collaboration, but even if students are sitting right by each other, they're going to be first taking care of themselves, solving their first 5 questions, and only then, if they find time, they're going to help their friend. I've compared the solutions. I've looked at the performance from the previous years. I've not had any alarm bells going off. So that's one way of trying to mitigate collaboration and assign stuff. Even in numerical courses like finite element analysis, I've been able to administer the entire exam through an online format. This was even in the in-person days. I used to do this, where they would be filling out a form with their solution. Now, of course, the difficulty and the complaint that the students will have is, well, it's a long process, and if one number is wrong, then everything in that calculation goes wrong. And if you have an automated grading setup, then maybe you're going to have trouble, and the student all of a sudden goes from in a binary mode. So then in the aftermath, what you would do is just don't release the grade immediately. Just cancel the grade. And if a student has got an absolute 0 for a certain question, then most likely the part mark issue has come up, and then you can go and look at those questions and grade them with a partial score.
Yeah, that's almost a universally good tip. Try not to linchpin your entire assessment on a series of questions that rely on each other. That's a dangerous game. But like everybody knows that already, I think. So.
We just had a comment, Dan, not to force you to speak here, but somebody offered one of the tools that you use in your course using programmable Avenue to Learn quiz questions. So the number of the questions can be randomly generated, and solution is calculated by Avenue to Learn. This generates unique questions for each of the students. So there's another tip there. And I guess Dan is the go-to person for that particular strategy. I am looking at our time. Did you want to expand on that, Dan?
Questions I'm ready to answer.
Okay. Do you want to chat a little bit about what you do with your programmable Avenue to Learn quizzes? Somebody offered that up.
Yes, so I'm doing multiple type of quizzes, and I'm using quizzes in different modes. I've used quizzes for a course which is mostly internal combustion engines, but it's practically an thermodynamics course, applied thermodynamics course. It has a lot of mathematics. So I've used the quizzes in different modes in assessments One way was to use just simply quizzes with one multiple choice and then about 5 types of quizzes. The typical quizzes, I'm not going there, those are simple, but what I've used once the system in which Jake just mentioned, in which I just put variables, and they are complex formulas. And then, for example, for one problem, the student had to solve about 5 steps of formulas to get the final result. So the way I've done, I introduced about 4 or 5 parameters. So every single student had a different, a completely different number, and the time was the limit, so they could not talk. So that was a way in which I tried to now ensure in a way the academic honesty. But in the same time, what it was interesting is that I asked them to give the final result, and then it was something which was automatically marked based on a formula combining all those 5 formulas. But I realized it's just a simple error for the student. They all get 0. So I entered another 5 steps in which they're supposed to provide the intermediate results for those problems, so that a simple error don't give them 0, at least we can follow up. So the idea that if the result was given as 100% by Avenue, you don't look at the other 4 intermediate steps. But if you see that it's an error there, then you see exactly where the error is and how difficult it is and how much you should decrease the point. But also I've used for handwritten problems, same idea. They had a quiz, and the quiz generated for them some numbers, and then they were asked to really solve problems by hand. And the approach I've used there, it's about 3-4 pages of detailed calculations, thermodynamics calculations. So what I asked them to do, and remember, each one had a completely different numbers. I put here only about 3 parameters, and the students were supposed to write everything by hand, and then they used nothing else but the cell phone to take a picture. They didn't have to do any kind of scanning if they don't have a scanner. And Mike Justison used CrowdMark, which he was extremely happy. I didn't use, I just used simply the software, which was Microsoft Lens. I think it's called Office Lens. So Office Lens was excellent. You can take a picture of the handwritten exam or assessment, and then it has the excellent opportunity. It's free on any platform, on iPhone, on Android, it's free. And then the advantage is that you can use very simple some filters in which you can see which of the filters will make your image easier to be read. In the same time, you can submit as a PDF. So that was my experience, and I think I was more than happy in the way it ultimately worked.
Thank you so much, Dan, for sharing that. We are at 3:01, which means we are officially 1 minute past the closing of the town hall. I want to just take a second and thank all of our panelists. I know Greg had to leave, so I've already extended my gratitude to him. But Jake, Liz, and Sasha, thank you so much for facilitating this discussion and being so willing to share your experiences and the risks that you are going to take with your course in the fall. And all of our participants who joined us today, thank you so much for your engagement, your questions, your perspectives. Very much appreciated. I've included my contact information in the chat. It's just ziadandm@mcmaster.ca. You will likely be hearing from me, but if you do have any specific questions in the meantime, please don't hesitate to reach out. I think I will now stop the recording. And